This video is a little bit like that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, except if you give me a patch bay, I'll spend 2 weeks making some rack boxes from scratch. But I filmed it, so here's the build. I'm making this project out of white oak and macquarie. I got the white oak on Craigslist. A woodworker had passed away and their family was, I guess, liquidating his woodworking assets, and I got it for a pretty good price. But it came too thick. It was at 1 inch and I needed it to be 3/4 of an inch. And so I went to my buddy's house and he has a planer and he was very nice to let me use his planer. But it was the first time I'd used a planer, and so I made a mistake. Well, it's a pretty big mistake. One of the boards ended up being noticeably thinner than 3/4 of an inch, which does cause me problems down the road, but this is the only white oak I had. I didn't want to start right over, and so we dealt with it. But you'll see what that does to me later. So I am trimming these to width. And in my tiny shop, I'm actually having a little bit of a problem with these long boards. My bench is only a few feet in front of the table saw, and so if it's not set up just perfect, then the board runs into the bench, and that is an issue. But, you know, we got there. Anyway, the white oak is 5 inches wide, and the macquarie is 2 inches wide, and it's a macquarie sandwich between two pieces of white oak, so 5 inches, 2 inches, 5 inches. The astute among you will notice that that adds up to 12 inches. Good job. You can really tell on this particular board how uneven this raw white oak was, as the end of the cut is much thinner than the beginning of it. That's all the pieces of white oak cut, and I'm going to do the macquarie, which is 2 inches wide, as I mentioned. I learned this making the countertops, which is what the macquarie is from, but macquarie has a lot of silica content, which makes it very, very aggravating to the sinuses. And so you can't see it here, but I've got the dust collection. I have a fan with a HEPA filter on it, and I'm wearing a mask because if I don't and I breathe in the dust from the macquarie, I will just sneeze all day. So I guess protect your lungs out there, everybody. Don't sneeze. Despite the fact that the macquarie is a very sneezy wood, I do think it's beautiful, and especially after you finish it, the result can be spectacular. On the countertops, there was some figuring that I couldn't even see until after oiling it, and it just looks so beautiful. I'm gonna rough cut the pieces to length now. I didn't have to do this by hand because I have a miter saw, but it's always good to practice hand tool skills, because hand tools can get you out of binds that, you know, power tools can't. And it doesn't have to be perfect either, because later on I'm going to more accurately cut all these pieces to length on the table saw with my crosscut sled. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to practice. Here's the first glue up. You can see I drew a triangle because there was a way that the pieces fit more snugly together, an orientation that I figured out, and I didn't want to lose that orientation. Gluing up is always just so stressful. It doesn't matter how big the glue up is. It's just always very difficult. Satisfying though. this whole time I'm thinking what type of joinery I should be using to join the sides together, and the problem I have is that one of my boards is too thin, and so like half of some of my panels are thinner than the rest of my panels. At the beginning I really wanted to do like a through 10 in or a box joint because I think they're beautiful, but I knew that it would be pretty challenging given that parts of my board are thinner. I ended up going with through dowel joinery with some shop made dowels, which was a pretty fun little adventure to go on. Very satisfying. Of course, getting the jig to work exactly how it's supposed to was a challenge in and of itself, but I wanted the dowels to be made out of the Macquarie, so I needed to home make them. As you can see, I drilled a hole that is the size of the dowel that I want in a piece of wood and sliced it on the table saw so that the cut on the table saw just barely kisses the hole in that piece of wood, and then I can put a chisel on top which will cut as I spin a piece of stock through that hole. And also, I should say I shouldn't take credit for this really creative dowel making jig. I saw it online. I wish I knew who it was, but anyway, you can really see here on this panel that the side that is closest to me is much shorter, much smaller, much thinner than the rest of it. So that's what I'm talking about. Anyway, I've got a stop block on the crosscut sled so that each piece is exactly the same. And it's going pretty well. The big pieces were kind of challenging. You saw that I had to use a lot of clamps and stuff, but we got it done. I really don't like measuring so much, and I tend to do it unreliably. So when I want two pieces to be identical, I tend to try to match them to each other, or match the second to the first, I should say, so those two pieces can be as identical as possible. This is how I solved my thickness problem. I glued pieces of scrap to what would be the inside of the boxes so that they could be of uniform thickness only at the ends, and then that required a lot of cleanup that I didn't super want to film. So here's the next part where I'm marking out the holes for the through dowel joints. Again, because I don't like measuring, I ended up using my combination square, my calipers set to the correct lengths for all the pieces so that I could mark all of the joints in the box the same. I did the glue up in two parts. This first half went okay, but the second half had a little bit of an issue, which you'll see in a second. One thing these Japanese saws are pretty good at is flush cutting stuff. Pretty satisfying to cut those little nubbins off and get a nice clean circle underneath. Pretty cool. The glue up continues. As I'm hammering this home a little bit, I am about to make a pretty profound mistake, which I'll just let play out as it happened. What are you thinking that you should be doing instead? Ah, crap! Oh no! Oh no! So that was frustrating. My glue was drying, and so I figured I'd just close it up how it is and see if I could fix it later. And then I just needed to take a break from wood that cracks on you. And so I'm hand making the brackets now, which the gear will screw into. I haven't worked a lot with metal before, so I actually bought a lot extra, kind of expecting that it would go badly and I would have to remake some stuff, but I was pleasantly surprised. I only had one like test piece and the rest of them kind of worked out just fine. These pieces of aluminum angle are 5.5 inches, which is how tall 3U of rack space is, and I needed 4 of them. I've never really drilled and tapped stuff either, so on a test piece, I'm marking a hole, drilling it, and then I'm going to tap it just to see if it works at all, or if how hard it is to break taps. I bought an extra one just in case, but again, you know, with some oil and going slow and feeling it out, it worked out just fine, and I was pretty excited about it. So I'm still pretty stoked on this. It feels magical to be able to tap holes. It's like a whole new world. Anyway, I did have a lot of trouble lining up the holes, and again, I'm gonna let past me explain my troubles. I'm not super sure how to do that. Now, wait a minute. Okay, it's all right. Okay, so theoretically, if I start this here, instead, they will be spaced equally. But it seems like they're not. They're super not. Why? Okay, let's visualize this because I'm tripping. This is 5.5. 5.5. The distance between the first actual hole and the last actual hole is 4.75. It's this distance here. Okay? Now I want this line that is 4.75 to go smack dab in the middle of this 5.5 inch span, which means I have to figure out how much space I need on both sides, and theoretically it should be this distance halved, 0.75. So this distance is 0.375. So if I measure out 0.375, oh, that's the distance to the first hole. Oh, you numpty. It's not the distance to this edge, because this edge is arbitrary. That's what we're, okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Whew. Okay. We figured it out. Okay, now I have Sharpie everywhere. But we can solve that by putting Sharpie everywhere. Okay, so now if I measure 0.375 this way and I make a mark with something. Okay, that's a mark. Now, if I put that mark in the center of this hole and make another mark here, that's gonna be 0.735. Sorry, 4.735. If past me wasn't that clear, what I was doing wrong was I was measuring the first hole against the edge of the rack example that I had rather than from the edge of the actual bracket piece that I was going to be making, and so nothing was lining up until I figured out that I was dumb. Anyway, I have a bunch of holes to drill and a bunch of holes to tap. At first I was doing it just by hand because I had heard that taps can be very brittle and you can break them, and later on I end up using a drill because A, of course it's much faster, and B, I realized I wasn't in that much danger to break it in aluminum. Here's past me again to explain how I'm countersinking the mounting holes. I've been experimenting with countersinking the attachment hole where it's going to go inside the box so that it's flush. Yeah, nice. So here's a better angle attached to a piece of scrap. You can see that. Man, that looks good. Countersunk and flush. And here's the process I ended up using on all the pieces to countersink those attachment holes. I did some experimenting with how to like finish these I thought about painting them, but I realized that I kind of like the aluminum and the light colored white oak, but I don't have one of those like abrasive disc thingies. I don't have a grinder or anything, and so I just taped some steel wool to a stick and put it in my drill, and it worked just fine. And the brackets ended up having kind of a nice brushed aluminum look because it's brushed aluminum. I brushed it. Okay, back to the glue up that I was mad at. First I'm going to trim the excess of the dowels with my Ryoba saw. And there was a lot of sanding to do. I didn't film most of it because really it was actually so much. Through a combination of chisels and sanding, and I got these boxes looking pretty good. The joints again are not perfect because of that fix that I had to make. If you look close, you can see the thin strip of scrap wood that I had to insert there. But after it's all said and done, it's structural and it will hold music stuff. So, you know, that's fine. Like I said, lots of sanding to do, but if you throw on some headphones and watch some Gundam 00, it's not so bad actually. So before finishing, I decided I would re-drill the holes for the mounting brackets. I'm marking those locations first on the actual bracket that I'm going to put in that location, and then I'll drill the holes and finish after that. I did 2 coats of water-based polyurethane. With everything together, it's the moment of truth, and it actually works. Time to throw on a YouTube video while I clean the desk and introduce these rack boxes to their new home. Just don't look at my cable management. It's a disaster. I will say the glass table does not hide any of my crimes, and is not a mistake I would make again, probably. So the rack boxes are done and they work great. Couple little mistakes here and there, but things I can live with. But now I have a patch bay, which was the whole point of why I built them. So let's use it. Let's make a jam. Here we go. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this weird woodworking music production video, then go ahead and subscribe and maybe I'll do more. And if not, be on your way. Watch a Ben Jordan video. I don't know. My name is Lucas. Thanks for hanging out.